Hello, hello, hello. This is Tamika Seaton, President and CEO of Grow Your Nonprofit, where we help startup small and stagnant nonprofits grow through fundraising strategies, strategic planning, and so much more. Guys, today you're in for a treat. I have my special guest here, Stacy Lee-Williams. She's with the Founders Scholarship Fund. She'll share with us today all about the organization and how it has grown over the years. But before we get started, I'd like to thank the sponsors of my podcast. Hodges University with a campus in Fort Myers. Stay near, go far. They change lives for the better. Trinity Life Foundation Naples, helping at-risk youth through their enrichment program, AVID. That stands for the Associations of Haitians Living Abroad. They just opened an amazing support center right here in the beautiful Fort Myers, where they will help people with immigration support, utility billing, English as a second language, and so much more. Last but not least, Vaxtruth. They received a grant from the CDC to raise awareness of COVID-19 and vaccine resources in the Black and Brown communities. So, like I said, my special guest here today, Stacy Lee-Williams. Hi, Stacy.
Hi.
How are you?
Great to be here, Tamika. Thank you for inviting me.
It is so great to have you. I know we've bumped into each other over the years, just sort of in passing, hi and by, and we never really sat down to get to know each other. So thank you for coming out to the Grow Your Nonprofit podcast.
Absolutely. It's such a pleasure to be here, and thank you for inviting me.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Thank you for being here. So why don't we start with you telling us a little bit about your background, and then we'll get into what you do at the Founders Scholarship Fund.
All right, so I moved to Southwest Florida probably about 20 years ago, right after September 11th. Worked in the corporate world. I was at British Airways when I first came. Would find myself back in the nonprofit segment, come back to corporate, back to nonprofit. And, it's just, I think working in nonprofit gives you such a sense of helping, assisting, serving, that I always find myself back into nonprofit work. Now my kids are older and I have more time. So started a small, organization here where we would do events, it's cultural events and things like that. Got to know a lot of people in the community, became part of the Mayor's Diversity Council, things like that. But when the opportunity came to work for Founders Fund about 5 years ago, and I looked at, what they did, it just aligned with what I was trying to do as a person. And so I accepted the position, and here we are.
Okay, very good. So tell us a little bit about the Founders Scholarship Fund. How long it's been in existence, and exactly what do they do and who they help?
So the Founders Scholarship Fund has actually been in existence for 30 years. We just celebrated our 30-year anniversary. It is a scholarship fund that was organized within the Club Pelican Bay community in Naples. Okay. And originally had started to just help with scholarships for their employees and their children. They will do a golf tournament and banquet every other year. And then, it grew to the point where they could actually offer scholarships out to the schools in Collier County. Wow. So became a nonprofit. Started opening up to the Collier County schools, and each year we give a 4-year scholarship to between 25 to 30 students.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
So it started with, when I first got there back in 5 years ago, we were giving $8,000 over the 4 years. Now we're up to giving $24,000 over the 4 years.
Per student. That's awesome.
Yes. And what that has accounted for, the last time we checked, was something like 25% of tuition for Florida State College. Wow. So it's pretty significant, right? And at any given time, I'm working with 100 to 120 students over 4 years. So we get to know them intimately. We have an award ceremony when they first get the scholarship. We have an annual luncheon where if the students are home for the holidays, they get to come and tell us how they're doing. We've just established a mentorship program where we have club members that are mentoring the students, and some of them are away, so it's more of a we can reach them on FaceTime. When they come to town, we have lunches with them, kind of. If we find somebody that's in the field that they're working in, so for example, if you're going to law school, we may have a member that's a lawyer, like a retired lawyer. that we would, kind of pair you with. So it's a lot of good work,
Yeah, that sounds awesome. So what is the criteria for students who are awarded the scholarships?
So what we do is every year we have a counselor's breakfast where we meet with the counselors of all the high schools.
Oh, that's
and
smart.
we give them the information, let them know. It's usually a 3.0 or higher GPA. We look at what activities they're involved in, what are they doing around town, and then what we do is we get all the applications. This year I think we had 120 applications. We narrowed it down to about 75 that qualified, and then the board members will pair up in teams and go out into the schools and interview the students.
Oh, that's
and then
really
we
cool.
have this come to Jesus moment where we all get together in the room.
I know,
and
that's so tough.
Oh my! Because we want to give all,
right?
Right?
Yeah.
There's these students are so fabulous, right? But then we kind of bring it down to our first and second choices and our third choices if we get more space, and then we picked about 25 to 30 students to give scholarships to. So very blessed to be able to do that.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's one thing I like about nonprofit, because I worked in government. I lived in Naples for 15 years, so I worked for Collier County government for 5 years, in the city of Naples for about 2 years in the mayor's office, and didn't really like politics. And I'd never considered nonprofit as a career. I served on boards, and then I was recruited by the Shelter for Abused Women and Children, their CEO, and became a senior fundraiser. And once I got into nonprofit, I felt purpose. There was a reason why I was waking up every morning. I felt good. I knew I was making an impact in people's lives. So yeah, thank you for that. It's really great work nonprofits do. And I actually just interviewed Mayor Anderson last week. And it was from a mayor's and board members' perspective on nonprofits. And the first thing he said during the interview, he said, we need nonprofits. The work they do is very important. Government can't do what nonprofits do.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely correct. So that's amazing. So with that said, you mentioned that the organization hosts their annual golf tournament every other year. Why is that?
Right. It's actually every other year and not annually. The reason why we do that is because, everybody does annual events.
Yes,
and as you know, Naples
lot of
is
work.
the hub of events.
Yeah,
Like nonprofit events, there's so many nonprofits at so many events that we feel like it's a little more exclusive, a little,
love that.
less taxing on our donors. And again, most of our donations come from within Club Pelican Bay. Our golf tournament is not open to the public. It's, within the community, and it sells out like
I bet it does.
So we feel like every other year is a good. We could look at maybe doing it as we move forward, depending on how finances are and things like that. But so far that has worked for us, and it works for us because we also get that year to get our order in the office, right?
Yeah.
So
that's awesome. That's awesome. So you mentioned before we started recording, the organization, they're always been doing amazing things. However, a lot of things were done by hand, and you were able to quickly see that. You started off as a part-time executive director, and now you're a full-time executive director. You were able to put policies in place and automate a lot of things. Tell me, what things were you were able to automate, and how that made your job better and everything better for the organization?
Oh, absolutely. So I tell people I have the hardest working board in any nonprofit that I've worked with or been a part of. I sit on several boards myself, or have, for nonprofits, and the Founders Fund board is, an active working board. Everyone is actively involved.
What does that mean, actively involved?
They're out there bringing in solicitations. They're out there, helping with the auction items. They are out there interviewing the students. They are mentoring students. So they are constantly involved in the organization, and not just making decisions on an administrative level, but they're involved.
I like that.
Right? And before I came on board, they were the ones doing all the work, and they had an employee of the club that was assisting with the paperwork, every other year for the event, and also every semester with the students. So I came on board first as a fund administrator part-time, just to do that work, and quickly realized that, we were using, again, pencil, paper, Excel spreadsheets to cover everything. So over the years, what I've done is put policies and procedures in place for everything we do, centralize our files, last year we started doing our applications through a software, which has eliminated so much work.
Yeah.
And we're currently in the works of making our events a software-driven event. And what that is doing is it's freeing up my time to foster our donors better, to, look at our sponsorships better and how better to assist and work with and really give value to our donors and to our sponsors and things like that. So, and more time for the students.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
So, we have automated and really streamlined a lot of the work that was dragging. I say that, I use that term because it's so antiquated, and I'm so proud of that, right? When they said, we really need you to come on board full time, I'm like, I'm not sure that I really want to work full time, but again, when people ask me what I do, I jokingly say, I'm a modern day Robin Hood without the stealing, right?
Yeah.
So we take affluential people money and we help students in need, and it's such a great honor to be able to see students that have graduated come back and say, the Founders Fund Scholarship meant this much to me, that without it I probably wouldn't have went to the school of my choice, or my family wouldn't have been able to assist me with going to college or things like that. So it really good work.
Yeah. So the whole premise of the Grow Your Nonprofit podcast is all about sharing open secrets about growing your nonprofit. You mentioned before we started recording the podcast, the budget was about $250,000, and then you guys were able to reach the $1 million mark. What strategies did you put in place in order to reach that level of fundraising?
Yeah. So again, when they first started, they would raise $200,000 to $300,000.
And how did they do that? Was this through the golf tournament?
It's done just every other year we do the annual banquet and golf tournament, and that's the admission price, that's the ask, that's the auctions, things like that is how we raise our money. On the off year, we may do an ask. And that will bring in some funds also. So some of the things that we did to put in place, because our event is every other year, is we did a sustaining benefactor. So you can actually sign up to give both years, even though our event is only 1 year.
That is genius.
Right? That's one of the things that we put in place. Another thing that we do is we do a pre-ask, right? Like a lot of people don't do this, but we meet with key people that we feel like would be really good donors before the event. And put those in place so that we have those in the room already when we're doing like the ask portion of the event. And that kind of like generates the buzz and have people giving and things like that. We've developed some amazing relationship with some of the businesses in Collier County to get raffle items and auction items and things like that, and live auction items. So these are some of the things that we had time to really do better and make it a better, more fun event. Like really hone in on how we do this event, since we're only doing it every other year, and just make it the best quality that we could.
Right.
Yeah.
I like that, because like we talked about earlier, most organizations do an annual event. So they do this event is over, and they're on to the next. I like the fact that you're doing your event every other year. Then that gives you a year to take a step back and look at what went well, what didn't go so well, and how we could improve upon. Another thing that stood out to me, relationships, the importance of relationship building. So the organization has been around for 30 years. I always tell, especially my new babies, new nonprofits, it's a marathon and not a sprint. Relationship building, guys. You heard Stacy say relationship building, sitting down, engaging.
Absolutely. I tell people all the time, I'm like, if you're hiring a fundraising administrator and you expect, like, you have a dollar amount that you want them to bring in, a lot of times, you'll meet with your executive director and they're like, well, you didn't bring in what we expected. It takes so many times to foster donors. So some of the things I tell people is, if you're a fundraiser, you have to have thick skin, right? The answer is yes or no. And I don't take no personally. Because no could be what's happening with you in that moment. Right?
Not right now.
No doesn't mean no forever, right? You might say no today, and tomorrow something will open up in your life. Or it might even be something that's happening and you're having a bad day, right? So we really foster those relationships, whether it's a no or a yes, that it might come to fruition at some other point, and really you do have to take time to build those relationships. Sometimes it takes a year or 2 years of fostering a donor before you actually get a donation.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
And people think, you know, oh my God, they said, no, I'm hurt.
Yeah.
You cannot take it personally.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Yeah.
You know? So.
Yeah. And you know, sometimes donors will test you. I had a particular client where they expected a donor to give them $5,000. Instead, the donor gave them $500. And I said, that's wonderful. That's a win. And I said, well, build that relationship and maybe next year it'll be more. Sometimes they'll test you to see if you send them a thank you note, if you're keeping them abreast as to what the impact of their investment has been making, stories, like what are you doing in the interim? You shouldn't be contacting your donors just when it's time to give again.
So that's another thing that we implemented, a donor appreciation event. We do newsletters biannually to go out and let them know what's happening with our students, what's happening with the organizations, things like that. You know, we actually had one of our board members was, you know, getting ready to gear up to do the ask and ask one of the potential donors, if I remember the story correctly, he asked for $1 million, and she said, "I'm going to give you $250 if you guys can match it."
Oh,
you know,
nice.
And we did organizations come together and match it, and eventually ended up giving $1 million and starting an endowment fund.
Yeah,
but
awesome.
Started out by giving us, you know, like you said, a significantly less amount, but asking for a match. So these are all the ways that you can implement. You know, make it where everyone has to come together and says, "Well, guess what? We can get this amount if we can match it." You know, and these are all like little nuggets of ways to really grow your nonprofit.
Right.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up, can you share with our audience how could a nonprofit organization get their board engaged and get them active and excited about the work they're doing? Because oftentimes you serve on boards. I serve on a few boards. You know, they're watching their watch and they can't wait to go. They say they're going to do something. You follow up with them. They really don't do it. What secrets have you guys implemented to keep your board engaged?
So I can speak for this from both perspective, as a board member and as a person that's trying to get people recruited for my board. I feel like you really need to find the people that have the passion for what you're doing. Okay. Right? Otherwise, they'll be, they won't be engaged. A lot of people join boards just to have that on their resume or to have, the notoriety of saying, I'm the board member of. You really want the people that are passionate about the work that you're doing. So our board members are really passionate about educating the youths, right? Being there, making sure that they get what they need to do it. If you're going to sit on a board, just don't be there for the show and tell of it, right? Some boards require like a financial commitment, but some don't. But I feel like whether or not a board or a committee that I'm sitting on requires a financial commitment or not, I'm there to serve. So I do my best to do the best I can. Right, and then I'm hoping that when people agree to join boards, that is what they're doing. Yeah. Right, and it might not be the resources might be you introduce me to somebody else, or you make something else happen that makes my job easier, or something like that. The hardest thing to deal with is board members and committee members that will not do the work. Right, because then what it does is it makes it harder for everyone else that's on the board to have to pick up that slack. Right, so I think when you're recruiting for boards, you're very conscious of what is this person's, does their mission align with our mission? Do their, what they want from life align with, are they passionate about what we're doing? So I think that's a key component of picking a board member.
That's very important. Well, Stacy, thank you so much for your time. I told you the time goes by so fast.
You sure did.
It really does, especially when you're having a great conversation with someone who's passionate and who's knowledgeable about what you're doing. So thank you for your service. If someone wanted to reach out to you to either ask a question or give another $1 million to your organization, how could they reach you, Stacy?
They can reach me at foundersfund1@gmail.com. I'm always available on my cell phone. It's 239-462-4044. My personal email, stacycleewilliams@gmail.com. There's so many ways you can reach me. Or hit up Tamika. She'll find me.
And how about your website? It'll appear on the screen, the website for the
foundersfundinc.org.
Okay, very good. Guys, you heard heard it here. Another amazing nonprofit executive director and another nonprofit right here in the beautiful Southwest Florida, making a difference in the community, impacting the lives of the future generation, our youth who are going off to college. That is so much important work.
Absolutely.
So it takes us all, and it is great to know that a community who's a pretty much a retirement community, they could be doing anything they want. Instead, they decide to give back. So that's so amazing. So I hope that you've learned something about growing your nonprofit, about events. I really like the idea of having events every other month, donor stewardship, relationship building, and thinking outside the box, putting policies and procedures in place to run more efficiently and effectively. So guys, stay tuned for more episodes of Grow Your Nonprofit.